Just wanted to first thank you guys for attending our Software 5.0 webinar. We have Jason Fullen, our Sales Engineering Director here, who will be showcasing our main features. Before we get to that, just a few housekeeping items. First, due to the number of attendees, everyone is in listen-only mode. However, we like this to be as interactive as possible. So please use the questions feature on the GoToWebinar panel, and you can enter questions and we will answer those. We aim to go for about 30 or 40 minutes to the new software, and then we will have a Q&A session at the end to answer some of your questions. And we will be sending out the recording of the webinar later this week, and we'll get back to you with any questions that we weren't able to answer during the session. Before we get into the deep dive of our software, we wanted to show you a quick video highlighting the 5 main features we're going to talk about today. And then Jason will go in and highlight these features. So we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, so I promised that the demo won't have that soundtrack to go along with it, but we will take a look at the software here in just a minute. But primarily what we wanted to do with this group today is jump into our new release and take a look at primarily the 5 main things that we focused within this release. We think that there's some really exciting features, from the addition of workflow options, a new approach with applications, and several other exciting enhancements and features that we wanted to take a look at today. So what we'll do as far as an agenda is I'll spend probably about 5 to 10 minutes on each one of those sections. We will have a question form set up through the webinar, so if anything comes up at that time, please feel free to shoot those questions through. If those questions are, pertain to what we're reviewing at the time, we'll take a second in between each segment and go through those questions, and then we'll also have some time for Q&A. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So what we're taking a look at here, is most of you should be familiar with, is Content Manager. Just as a review, this is the brains of the operation as far as 4Winds Interactive is concerned. And this is where you do all of your maintenance, your creation, adding content, building templates, etc. So the tool set is still the same. For those of you that have spent a lot of time in it, you will notice that we've got some fancy new icons there that are a little bit more modern looking. That was actually a request that we had from some of our larger customers. So now you'll notice the cool new color scheme, I think, that we're going with. Definitely modernizes the tool set. But for those of you that have used it in the past, it's the same drag and drop functionality that we've always had. So there's no worry about it. Obviously, you want to get a little bit more involved with some of the new features. But as far as the basic day-to-day management of the signs and applications, it's basically the exact same interface that you've been working with. So should maintain a high level of familiarity there. First thing we want to focus on today is the addition of FWI Store. And the concept of FWI Store, really what we wanted to do is provide online access to a new concept that we worked on that we'll spend a little time going into, called applications. And what the applications will allow us to do is actually be able to download best-in-breed or best-in-class pre-built applications for a certain level of configuring. And we'll take a specific look at that in just a second. But the tool that we're using to distribute that, and kind of the first step to allow access for that, is FWI Store. And FWI Store is accessible right through Content Manager. So if you jump up here to the top and follow the cursor, internally we're trying to figure out if this is a fruit stand or some sort of a vendor stand, but it's basically a storefront icon. So if you go ahead and click on that, what that will do is launch you directly into FWI Store. So very similar to the experience that you'll see with your mobile devices, getting applications through like the App Store or Google Play Store. There's no need to jump out of your tool set to actually get to this environment. We're not accessing an internet browser or anything like that. It's directly through our system. So it allows you to have very easy access to this tool set. And what you're greeted with here is basically a layout of some of the most popular items or featured items that you can download directly through the FWI Store. So similar to those of you who may have been using Content Store in the past or using Content Subscription, you'll notice that we have a selection of different options throughout here that you can then drill into to get more detail. So for instance, look at this announcements application. I can get a little bit of information as far as what it is, kind of a teaser of what this specific application is, as well as down in the left-hand corner you've got version information. So we will be publishing new versions, improved versions throughout the lifespan of that individual application. And then little icons for actually the supported versions of the player that we have, whether it's Windows, whether it's Mac player, whether it's web player. So you can very quickly go through and be able to recognize the applications you might be interested in. So if I go ahead and click on that, that allows me to drill into this specific application and get more information. So again, similar to what you might have seen in Content Subscription, there's a bit of a pop-up that provides additional information. Gives you a full-size screenshot of what this individual application looks like, as well as some basic information about, again, versioning, if it's an interactive or non-interactive application, what the orientation or resolution might be, again, more information on the platform, and information and just basic requirements for that individual application are. So when you would download one of these applications, not only are you allowing access to the application, but any sort of additional documentation that might be required for the setup, configuration, or support of that application will also allow you access to that documentation as well. So as far as how to use FWI Store, there's very simple functionality that anyone using a search tool in a web browser would be very familiar with. You can come up to the top here and search for something specific. So if I was looking for, say, something specifically for corporate, I could search for that and get no returns. Let me go ahead and try live data. All right. That search functionality is working well. Announcements. There we go. You just got to type in the right thing. So you'll notice then the announcements actually pops up, that application that we were just taking a look at. You can also add additional parameters around that search functionality as well to further drill down. In this case, it was pretty specific with the exact title of the application. But if you needed to drill down further, you can have additional information there. And then you can even remove them as you see fit, just with hitting the X, and you can see we go back to the standard return response for the featured items. If searching isn't your thing, or you keep typing in the wrong words like I just did, you have an option over onto the left where it's actually more browsing features or functionality. So if I wanted to take a look at the apps like I've been talking about, you'll notice that now we have a little pop-up, a little sidebar that comes up that will allow us where we can view all apps or we can drill down specifically. So if, again, I wanted to try to find the corporate apps, in this functionality I can see all the corporate applications that are available there. And drill down to a specific industry. Same goes for if I was looking for something for healthcare or hospitality. I can just make those selections, and it's going to filter those results for results that we've seen have worked well in a specific given industry. If you're looking for interactive or non-interactive displays, the same functionality, you can make those choices. And then as I mentioned before, you can also drill down further. So if we're looking for horizontal-only applications, you can see it whittles it down. And again, as we were talking about before, you can see that everything's being added up in the search bar up on the top of the display. So you can add custom search parameters here to these standard built-in search parameters, or you can just go with the standard boxes. So I keep talking about applications as far as what FWI Store offers. However, there's a lot more that's available here. So for those of you that have used Content Subscription in the past, you'll be happy to see that we do in fact still have a good selection of content that can be available. So everything that we had in Content Subscription is now available in FWI Store, and FWI Store is the environment that we will continue to maintain and add the new content as time goes on. So very similar to what we were looking at before. If I clear this application search parameter, go back to content, and I'm looking for, say, just images or something like that, I can pull that up, and all the standard content that we used to have in Content Subscription with the backgrounds and things like that, as well as new items, are still available here through this through the content search parameter. Along with content, we've also now provided easier access to plugins within our system. So one of the feature enhancements of one of our more recent releases, we allowed for the use of actually being able to use plugins to add functionality on top of our core code, which gave us some additional functionality available for our software. So rather than actually writing complete enhancements into our software, we have the ability now to use plugins to overlay the inherent functionality of the solution. Some of the examples of the plugins that we've written, we have an interface format. So if you wanted to actually interact with an interactive application without needing to touch the display, you could use the motion detection functionality within a Microsoft Connect to actually interface with that display through that device. It's a great application for video walls, or just kind of a fun thing that people are interested by and can react to. As well, we also have a Ping plugin, which allows for the ability to actually take a piece of video or an image and then draw on top of that, save it, email that out to people. So we've had people use that for marking up everything from maps to, in this case, you can see it's a sports video, so highlights of a specific video and diagramming the play charts. So we're adding more and more plugins as we move forward, but we are now allowing some easier access to those to allow you to enhance your use of the FWI solution, and you can access them directly through FWI Store.
We have a quick question on FWI, if this comes standard with Software 5.0 or if there's an additional cost for FWI Store.
So the functionality of FWI Store is built into Release 5.0. It's accessible through the tool sets. And everybody can actually get into it to see what we have available if you wanted to explore some of the functionality that we're providing through FWI Store. However, access to being able to download this functionality is based on a subscription charge, which is for those of you who have used content subscription in the past, is the exact same pricing chart for that. If you want to actually look at what that would look like for your individual property account, corporation, whatnot, just contact your customer service rep or your sales rep.
Thanks.
Sure. So that was actually a nice segue. Thank you. If we go take a look, let me just go back to some of these featured applications again, and want to take a look at how you would actually access this should you be subscribing to FWI Store. And I want to select one of these apps. I particularly like this countdown clock. This is kind of a neat functionality. So if I wanted to download this and build it into my environment, what I would do is I could select that, go into the drill down, get the more information, realize this is definitely something that I want, and I'll go ahead and click download, get a couple of dialog boxes that pop up, be downloading it from FWI Store, and then you can see that I get a message that the app has been properly imported. So if I close out of that and then just take a look, you'll notice down here that we have a new tab that's existent down at the bottom where we have always had our content library, our templates, users, and groups. You'll notice there's an apps tab now. So if I select that, you'll notice that this countdown clock that I just downloaded is now available within the app library. So at this point, just through easily clicking and downloading it, actually directly into Content Manager, access through both Content Manager Desktop and Content Manager Web, so that there's no need to, for those of you who might have downloaded an app from Content Subscription in the past, there's no need to actually go out, import something manually. It was kind of a clunky process. Now it's just imported directly into the interface, and you can go right into actually leveraging that application and functionality within your visual communications network. So very similar to what we used to look at with the content or the templates. It's still drag and drop functionality directly within Content Manager. So if I want to take the countdown clock and drag it up into this location here, you notice it's just the drag and drop from the library. I'm going to go ahead and sort this up at the top so it's first in the order. And now I have an app loaded into a sign within my network. So the only thing I need to do now is actually, rather than going through and creating a template and adding content and going through developing an application myself, I can just right-click on this app and drag down to Configure. And when I select Configure, you're presented with a dialog box that allows you access to the configuration functionality of that individual application. And you'll notice that I've got a few tabs across the top here. What we do with our best practices is we kind of organize them by theme to allow you to kind of provide a level of focus. So specific configuration items, timing as far as like duration and when it's going to play, as well as appearance. So I can go through those different areas to provide a little area of focus around what I'm actually configuring at this point. So if I wanted to, say for instance, configure an event date, let's go ahead and, when is Halloween? Is it the 31st?
Yes.
31st, okay. So if we want to count down to Halloween, I'll just go ahead and select that on the calendar, and we'll just say, I don't know, let's just say midnight. So we'll count down to the actual day. Don't think you can actually go trick-or-treating at that point yet, but maybe. So we'll configure that time, and then we'll jump into the timing here. It's got a fallback duration of 30 seconds. So when we say fallback in the configuration, it's basically what our best practice recommendation around that specific application is. So in this case, we're looking at a duration for that app to play 30 seconds before jumping to either the next piece of content, the next app, the next template, whatever you've got scheduled within your overview. So those fallbacks are set up as a default that you can either keep or you can change. So in this case, I could go in here and change what duration I want it. So if I wanted to say just a minute, I can make that change. So you have the option to do that or not, and then you can always push back to the fallback just by hitting the X, and then the default setting will pop up there as a default. So then we'll just do a couple more things with appearance. Actually looking for an individual background. So you'll recognize these little ellipses here as a way to actually search out to a file. So if I wanted to grab, I don't know, let's get this little nature scene here. I can go ahead and add that as my background. I can change the text. So I don't know, let's just say Happy Halloween. I think I'm spelling all of that right. Then subtitle text, additional text on the screen. I don't know, who doesn't love candy? A couple exclamation points. And then we can even change the clock position. So in the picture, it was set up at the bottom, but if I want to have it set up maybe in the middle, I can hit this drop down. So you'll notice that there's a lot of different ways to actually interface with these configurations. And what we're doing, rather than needing to call out a specific URL or do a lot of manual typing, we're defining how you want to access these individual background paths, or say, for instance, the clock position as a drop down to make the user experience very easy to set this up. So if I wasn't explaining, it would probably have taken me all of about 10 seconds to get it set up. And then I can even preview it to make sure that my settings are the way that I want it. So in this case, maybe I don't actually want it on the bottom with the clock. Maybe I want it at the top. I'll go ahead and make that change, refresh the preview, and you can see now the clock is up at the top, counting down the days to Halloween. So if I click OK and then preview within the standard preview window, you'll notice that within that sign, or with that given location within my overview, I have this now available as an application. Now you'll notice I have the countdown clock as well as a standard template. Very similar to stacking templates within a sign. You can stack applications as well. So if I wanted to have this announcements in there as well, again, it's a drag and drop up there. I'll make sure it's top of the list, and you'll notice now I have the announcements stacked on top of countdown clock as well as the standard horizontal display. So that makes it very easy for me to go in, pull in a bunch of different applications, and then set up durations within the configuration to be able to loop through all of those individual applications so that I can have all of the functionality that I want within my displays without a lot of the standard setup that you might be used to within the system.
They look great.
Any questions on the applications that came through?
We just got one, and it can be background for applications, be animation, or just images.
It depends on which application you would download. Some we would recommend with just images. If there's like crawl content or something like that, that would be processor intensive on the player. So we might recommend like a static background image, but you can change them. In this case, it might come through a little bit choppy across GoToMeeting, but you'll notice that megaphone there has a bit of an animation in it where you have the little rings going out to provide some motion. So you have that ability to get motion or static image. And one thing that I didn't touch on that might be interesting to some of you is that applications aren't just something that you can just access and pull in through FWI Store. You can publish these applications as you best see fit. So what this would allow you to do is, say for instance, if you're a university trying to create a brand standard across a number of different schools, or a corporation that's trying to manage a bunch of different room offices, we've always been able to provide some level of flexibility through our users and group settings to allow people access to like certain regions or something like that to make changes to the content while you still maintain a brand standard. That's even easier now with applications. So you actually have the ability to take these and publish them themselves. So if I wanted to take this POC environment and publish the entire thing as an application, it's a matter of a right-click, select Publish App, and then basically I'm just asked to populate some information here, give the application a name, provide a version if there's any associated documentation. FWI would include the documentation here as far as how to configure, and then additional information. And then basically what we're doing is we can import these settings from the variables of a player, from another application. You can set them up custom, and then you basically define here what configuration options you're providing. So if you only wanted, say for instance, going back to this background concept, if you only wanted to provide access to the background concept and that's the only thing someone can configure, you could select that, select a specific control type. So we would probably want to actually search for URL here, provide some information as far as what this is actually doing, setting up a default value for that fallback value if you had like a standard brand background that you wanted to use. And then what you can do is save all those settings and actually publish that out as a file that then you can distribute and import into other content managers across your enterprise.
Great.
Bringing that up, I forgot to touch on that. Okay, so that's applications. The next thing that we want to take a look at is the workflow functionality within the software that we've added. For those of you that have used our users and group settings in the past, you'll know that there was no actual active workflow functionality within the software. There was a lot of limitations around what certain people could do, and then there was a manual process of actually having to send the emails out and communicating within the group that managed the signage to actually control all of that and put some form to it. So what we've done is we've added some workflow into the tool set that allows for some of that to be taken into account for an individual group right through Content Manager or the Management Suite. So I'm going to take these apps out just to clean this up a little bit. And what I'll do is I log on as a different user. So I'm going to jump out of my admin account, save the changes to the database, and then I'll log in as let's say user 2, who has limited permissions within the environment. So I'm now logged in, as you can see up here in the top left, I'm logged in as Diane or user 2. And Diane has permissions as far as a user group to be able to add content, but not to necessarily approve the content. So what Diane can do is similar to what we've always done. She could come in and pop open something on, in this case, the desktop, which is a folder of content. Same drag and drop interface as always. I drag that content in. I'll go ahead and click OK to use it. And now, if we take a look at our content library, you'll see that ad has been added to the content library. And you'll notice that the status here is reflecting as new. So to take a look at our template overview, and I drag this in, as I normally would, to a given region, this main region or this top right region, the weather region, you can see that I'm just getting this little circle with a cross through it. So I'm not actually able to add this content anywhere. And the reason that I can't do that yet is it hasn't yet been approved. So what Diane would do then is right-click on that content, and you'll see that there's an option here for request approval. So then when I hit request approval, it'll ask me to save the changes to the database, and then it gives me an opportunity to basically send a message out to Jack or myself, who are the approvers within the environment, if there's any specific notes. So in this case, we'll just say, please approve. I can preview it to make sure it's the right piece of content that I want to actually take a look at there. So I'll go ahead and that looks right. If I click OK, that request has now been sent. And you'll notice that the status here is no longer new, but now is approval pending. So if I log out and just take a look at the setup of this real quick, log off as Diane and back into the tool set as my own, what we can do here is actually provide some settings around how this is actually set up. So in this case, we can set up our email notification to where we're just pointing through a specific server, sending it out through credentials, providing a blanket email address, in this case just coming from myself. And you see there's certain templates as well. So you have your approval request, interim approval, rejected, and there's basically standard templates that get sent out. And that's how you can set up your email interface through this. So what that manages then is all of the communication through the email server so that that information can be spread out to individuals across the team. And you'll notice that I now in my email here have an email from Diane, username, that's requested approval for a specific content item. Please approve or reject this. So I get an active notification that my approval is required for a given piece of information within the software. So what I would then do with that is come into Tools and then take a look at Workflow Tasks. And this provides me a list of all of the content that is awaiting my approval. I can then also filter that and submit it, or filter it through these items above here if it's just items to approve, or I want to take a look at things that are submitted by me, or in this case, everything. We just got one at this point. Now, this could be tricky if you're using a pretty large database of content to be able to actually access all of this content and find it. So what we've done, similar to the search functionality or the find functionality in the software, is you can click this hyperlink, and what that'll then do is it'll highlight where that content has been added within the content library, allowing it to be a little bit easier to find that content through that hyperlink. So now that I've found it, it's just a matter of right-clicking on that content, and then if I really don't like what happens, I can cancel the approval request, or I can approve and or reject that content. So with a right click, I go ahead and take a look at there. I get a history of all of the approval requests. So if there's different versions or something, I can take a look and get a feel for what it used to look like and what it looks like now. And again, preview that content from here so I can make sure it's something that I want to approve. Then it's just a matter of I can add in a comment again, or I can just select approve. And you'll notice that now the status shows as approved. So just to complete the cycle, let me log back on as Diane. It's showing as approved. If I jump into the template, you'll notice I can now add that into the region. It's now been added into main content. And if I preview it, you can see the content playing in that main region. So what that workflows for me to do is really that active notification to any set group of approvers that would want to be able to actually control some of the content and make sure that what's getting up on the sign is in fact what you want it to be. Any questions on that section, Emily?
Nope, we're okay right now.
Okay. All right, so that pretty much wraps up the workflow. Let me go ahead and log back on as myself here real quick. Okay, so then the next thing that we want to take a look at is the Content Manager Web for the use of our tool set up in the cloud and allowing access through the web interface. So for those of you that have used our web management before, you're familiar with Content Manager Express, as it's fondly referred to here at FWI. So basically what we've done is we've taken the concept of CMX and given it a facelift so that it's much more similar to the interface that you'd be seeing on Content Manager Desktop. So as I go through here and log in, it's gonna load up the database that I was accessing in Content Manager. So it'll take a second here to load that up. But basically what we've done here with Content Manager Web, outside of the new branding you'll notice on the top of the display, is we've tried to make it much more similar to Content Manager Desktop. So for those of you who are familiar with CMX, while it was a fairly tool for minimal changes to a visual communications network, it was a bit of a hassle to try to learn how to use it. It was a lot of drop-down interfaces. There wasn't a lot of drag-and-drop functionality. The layout of the network overview was reminiscent of Manager Desktop, but not necessarily the same user experience. So really what we wanted to do with Content Manager Web is take that experience that you see on Content Manager Desktop and promote it into Content Manager Web. So as soon as this opens up here, you'll notice that the network overview is very similar. You've got the same maximizing drop-down functionality that you would have in Content Manager Desktop. We've added a lot of features and enhancements to actually make this a much easier tool to use. The drag and drop functionality, the importing of content, the ability to monitor, and then some nice changes around how we actually manage web deployments for those of you who use Web Player or iOS Player, so that we can publish those things to HTML and be able to access those URLs. So now it looks like it's finally coming in here. There's a lot of data to load in that database. What I was referencing just a second ago is you'll notice in the network overview, this is exactly what we saw within Content Manager. So we have the two locations that I had set up in that database. All the iconography is the same. If I maximize these locations, you see that this interspace is exactly the same with all of the sub-locations that we have. Within those locations, we then have individual signs or deployments for the applications, templates, regions, and content. So this is the exact same way that it's laid out in Content Manager Desktop. So anyone who uses Content Manager Desktop is going to be able to come in here and very easily be able to know their way around the tool set and the system. One of the great things now that we have that's a big enhancement within Content Manager Web is actually the ability to preview within the tool set. So we've always been able to take a look at the template, but we've never really been able to preview the display itself. So you notice as I highlight that tab, we have the background imagery and some of the other content preview off to the right. Everything will eventually load as it accesses the content, but I can actually make changes and edits to a specific application or a specific sign, template, etc., and be able to actually preview it directly through this tool rather than have to deploy it out to a URL, deploy it out to my local content player, and I can access it through here. And then you'll also notice that we're providing some information as far as where this individual preview is located. So it's a sub-location of reference, active verticals, corporate, etc. So that's a nice little enhancement of the solution. As far as being able to view a timeline or functionality within content, which was always one of the things that were a little bit difficult to use about CMX, I can actually come through multi-select different content items. So it's not just one piece of content at a time. I can take a look at multiple pieces of content at a time, and then take a look at our timeline by selecting this up here at the top left of the corner. And then you'll notice that very similar to what we have in kind of a timeline view, to take a look at when content's actually set to play, if there's different recurrences, etc. And that's all available within Content Manager Web at this point. You'll also notice that there is a network monitor option. So I'll get into this in a little bit more detail in a second. But what you can do here is be able to select individual locations, select the network monitor, and then we can get a return on some of those results. And I'll go into that in a little more detail in just a minute. But being able to do that through both desktop and web certainly makes the tool set considerably more robust. One of the great features that's new to Content Manager Web is for any of you that have been using our web player, are looking at using our content player for iOS, anywhere that we're actually deploying out to a URL, that was always kind of a manual process where we could publish something and then go to another site and make it available for the deployment. What we've done here is actually make that now available with Content Manager Web. So I can right-click on the player, I can go to Edit Publish Signs, select that, and then what I can do now is add new signs, which allows me now to deploy that out to a web URL for a web player deployment, for Content Player iOS, for mobile deployments. And I can do all of that directly through CM Web, which really is a huge time saver and a very nice enhancement for anyone who's using those tools. And I believe it also makes those tools much more accessible for those of you who haven't leveraged them yet. So that's definitely a nice enhancement to Content Manager Web.
Great. We have one quick question. Is Content Manager Web included in our Content Manager Desktop price?
So the Content Manager Web is part of FWI infrastructure. So FWI infrastructure, that includes FWI services, framework, your database, as well as like the Content Manager, and then your players are on top of that. But all of that infrastructure is wrapped into the player license. So if your database is hosted in a SQL environment, either with us or something that you might have on premise, you can leverage Content Manager Web to access the same environment that you access with Content Manager Desktop, and all of that infrastructure is built into the player licensing.
And then one more question, is this a hosted product or will it run on our servers? And I believe this is directly to Content Manager Web.
It can be either. It's one of the beauties of our solution is that you have a lot of flexibility as far as what your IT strategy might be to work with our solution. We can do this in a hosted environment, or we can make it part of an enterprise installation on-premise, hosted in your data center or on your property for your enterprise. It's really up to you.
Questions. Thanks, everyone. This one is, can you show what the Content Manager Web sign URL looks like?
Sure. So if we just come back into this, we'll edit publish signs. Let's actually just go through this process. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm publishing the URL, and then I'm saving the changes to the database. Then we can take a look at, oops, under the network monitor. We can take a look at what that URL looks like. Go back into edit publish signs. It's retrieving my deployments now. And as soon as it does, we can take a look at it. I guess what we'll do is we'll look at the actual URL itself, and then we can take a look at what it would actually deploy, what the deployment would look like. It's taking a second to actually get that URL. So let me just let me show you what it looks like in Web Player, because this was what the end result would be. So I'm just opening this up in a browser, and you can see that this actually gives us kind of a temporary URL. So we've got basically your server name, and then there's a long string of information which can be shortened up through just changing the address and making it a little more accessible. Usually what we see with deployments like this is that they're just loaded into like an iPad for Content Player iOS, or it's a pre-built link that you would have on a mobile device or another player device, and then it's pretty easy to access it that way. But that'll give you an idea what the URL actually looks like, and it looks like it's having a hard time actually loading it right now. But we can take a look at it maybe towards the end of the demo, see if it's saved through. Okay. Oh, looks like I might have actually lost internet connectivity. That would explain the problem.
So we're still seeing it, Content Manager Web.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to monitoring then. Okay. So functionality that we've had within our software using pieces of our infrastructure, primarily FWI services, has since release, I think like 4.3 allowed us to actually monitor the health and status of a given network. So basically, at a high level, what our solution does is the players send logs back to FWI services, and then FWI services makes an XML feed available that previously we've always had to build an application around to allow you to access that data. We basically used it as like a live data item to populate that information. Now, rather than actually going through that extra step, the monitoring is actually built into Content Manager Desktop and Content Manager Web to allow you to actually get a feel for the overall health of your network directly through the tool set, which again is designed to kind of streamline the functionality and support of this system and make your life a little bit easier to take a look at those things. So if we go ahead and let me just expand part of the network here. So I can select anything from an individual player to the entire network or a given location. So if I want to just take a look at maybe this is verticals location, I can come over here and select the network monitor selection here. And what that'll do is basically pull back all of that data from FWI services. So we're still leveraging the same data, but in this case, we're providing it in a easier to access format. There's no need to build an application. It's all just available directly through Content Manager. So I can take that, and like I said, I can filter that any way I want. So if I want to whittle down to a few signs, I can select an individual location, refresh, and you can see that that's providing information on a much smaller subset of the players themselves. You'll also notice that there's a bit of a status information here as well, where it's actually telling me how many items I've retrieved, so that also helps us identify that maybe there's network lag and that number's counting up slowly, or maybe we're not retrieving everything and there might be an issue with one of the players. It gives us a little bit more information around that. I can then refresh that as often as I want, either manually or I can refresh it every certain set of minutes. And then this data is presented to me really any way that I want. So in this case, right now I'm only showing 4 examples. There's a little screenshot icon here that I can click to actually get a screenshot. But I can also really make this look any way that I want. So if I want to select certain columns that I want to take a look at specific things that we're reporting, you'll notice as I scroll down this list that there are a lot of options as far as information that we can actually report on, whether it's settings within the individual players, whether it's information from like an RS-230 connection, if a display is on or off. If we want to take a look at maybe like the services host name where we're reporting that information. If there's any hotspots that are built into a player as far as like hidden interactive regions that provide content, we can get a report on that information. There's really a large list of things that you can report on. But basically I would pick the things that are important to me. I could go ahead and select those, press OK, and then that's going to update the information that I have presented within this report. I can then take that information and reorganize it any way that I want so that the information that's most important to me is showing up right at the start there. So a lot more flexibility as far as the information that you can get. You can customize it on the fly, which was never something we could do all that well with the actual live data approach that we used to take, so that's a nice enhancement. Plus, there's really just that convenience factor of having it built right into the management infrastructure to allow you to access that information and really be able to leverage that functionality much more effective than we ever had previous to FiveTo.
Great. So those are the 5 main features. So right now, before we get to Q&A, we'd like to just really quickly touch base on how you can upgrade to 5.0. If you guys are interested in upgrading, if you guys can email your customer service representative or your sales representative, we will go ahead and start that process. So we do have some unanswered questions here, so Jason, I will be posing them to you. Please send anything over through that questions box. And if we don't get to your question, please know that we will be following up with you in the next couple days to get that answered for you. So the first 2 are going back to applications, or I'm sorry, this is workflow. And so the question is there any way to have an auto update in the area? So after the approval is gone through, if it's for picture A, it gets approved, it will automatically upload to that section or that.
So the design of the workflow is really to separate the approval process from the management process. So while we could probably do something like that, it kind of defeats the purpose of why we designed it the way that we did. We basically want the users to come in, add the content, and then really have an admin that's not necessarily adding content or responsible for that, just to confirm that. So having like an automatic upload is something that defeats that purpose a little bit. There is an option within the software to allow for people to self-approve so that those individuals can add content in, right-click and prove it themselves, and then add it to a given region. There's a lot of development around this functionality within our software. It's one of the primary elements within our roadmap for upcoming releases. Right now it's tied specifically to content, but we're looking to wrap it into deployment, playlists, really anything that you can do within the software. So there are going to be a lot of enhancements in this feature moving forward. So if it doesn't address necessarily all of your specific issues, please be sure to have that conversation with your customer service rep or your sales representatives, and we can get that built into the development roadmap as well.
Great. And kind of related to that is, can a user be approved to add to only specific regions?
Yes. So that's not really necessarily part of the workflow approval. It's much more a setting of the users and group permissions that we've always had. So individual users, while they might be able to get a piece of content approved, they can still be limited to which regions or templates or displays, areas of the network they can actually add things to, which is, again, part of the reason why we have that break from the auto upload. But yeah, that is still something that you can limit within the users and group missions within the settings of the database.
Good. So this is a two-part question. The first one is 5.0 a free update, or is there a charge to upgrade?
So with 5.0, if you are a 4.6 customer, there's no need. So you're running on version 4.6, which was our last release. There's no need to actually get additional keys. If you're running previous to that release, you will actually need additional keys, and you'll need to contact us to take a look specifically at what your database, how it's set up. The reason that we do that is we want to ensure that all of the content, all of the templates, everything that you've got built into that database is still going to be fully functional within 5.0. The older the version you get, the more of a chance there is that there need to be some changes and updates, and that's something we can communicate to you for you to make yourself, or something that we could provide services for. Generally, they're small things like live data layouts are a little bit different in a newer version than they were in an older version. It's not something that's just going to break the signs, but it usually is something that's worth taking a look at. Okay.
And the second part of that is about the applications. And are these apps and plugins only available through the subscription to FWI Store, or can you get them a la carte?
So the applications that we have right now are only available through FWI Store. However, the functionality to publish applications is inherent in 5.0. So if there are applications that you yourself want to develop for distribution, there's no requirement to have a subscription to FWI Store to do that.
Okay. And this one's with apps as well regarding live data. Apps that can take live data from all regions in the world. So I believe meaning the third-party content is maybe housed in another country.
Yeah, I mean it's similar to what our standard setup would be for any live data item. And if we can see the data source, it's hosted online or up on an FTP or something to that effect that the player or the application has access to, it can certainly access that content just like we always have. It's just a matter of pointing that URL to the configuration.
Okay. This one is about Web Manager. Is Content Manager Web optimized for a specific browser?
Not necessarily. It's been certified against all the major browsers. I know personally I use it in both Chrome and Internet Explorer. So it's not something that's tied to a specific browser.
Okay. With questions in terms of who your customer service representative is, and when we send out the recording of the webinar, we'll make sure to include the address so you are able to get in contact with that team, so they'll be able to help you with that process. Just going through, and it looks like here's another question on Prezi. Can Prezi slideshows be inserted into 5.0?
Not that I've ever seen. Usually the Prezis are accessible more through HTML, which leads me to believe that you could load the URL to those and access them via HTML. However, that would limit some of the functionality of the actual Prezi presentation. Generally, what we see more often is our customers use like a PowerPoint or take a PowerPoint concept, convert it to a PDF, and then have that act as slides.
Okay. Is regarding FWI Media Player. Does it support volume normalization for videos? And we might have to go confirm that with one of our team members, but we will get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I'll have to check on that. I know FWI Media Player, what it allows us to do much more effectively, and I've definitely had some personal experience with this just recently at a trade show, is it really improves our ability to manage more complex video streams, so higher bit rates, higher resolution like 4K. It really improves the level of flexibility and performance that we have using those content items over the other two standards, VLC and Windows Media Player that we've used previously. So that does allow for some enhancements there for like a 4K video, as well as the ability to play things as a separate process. Runs that a little bit more smoothly than the Windows Media Player did. So it's definitely provided some levels of enhancement improved functionality. On the roadmap for that as well, for those of you that use IP streams across multicast networks, that'll also be built into FWI Media Player within the next release that we have, which will erase our requirement to use VLC if there's challenges on versioning or anything like that that you've experienced. So that's also another enhancement that FWI Media Player allows for us to put into place.
Okay. The next question is, can Content Manager Web be used to deploy to our content players on site, or does it strictly deploy to the web player?
No, it's just like Content Manager Desktop. You have flexibility to deploy to local IPs and computer names. There's no requirement to actually deploy out to just the web. That's just an additional feature and functionality within Content Manager Web. So if you're deploying to your local networks through FWI services, something that you can leverage for that.
And we actually got the opposite of that question as well. Can web players be set up from Content Manager Desktop?
Currently, Web Player requires Content Manager Web for deployment.
Okay. Let me just look through here. Will Content Manager work with Internet Explorer 8?
Content Manager Web, yes.
Okay. This question is about upgrading. If you're on Content Manager 4.5, can you upgrade to 5.0?
Yes.
You'll just need to contact the customer service representative to kind of help you along with that process.
Yeah, 4.5 is everything 4.5 and after is a pretty easy transition to 5.0. So that might also be something, depending on what your staff looks like, that you could explore even doing on your own. So.
For this one, it's currently only adjust the aspect ratio on image objects. With 5.0, can we do this with PDF, PowerPoint, or other formats?
So I believe you're referring to the scale to fit functionality within the software. That would be my guess as far as that question goes. So you're still going to be limited on what you can do with that, just based on the presentation formats that we're accessing for the individual content items. So imagery is still going to be the primary thing that you can adjust the scale to fit functionality. Things like videos and things like that will scale, but they won't. The aspect ratio won't change.
Okay. Does the new version have interactive wayfinding, like showing a map on a tablet and drill down to each waypoint, like for meeting spaces or event booths?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big part of what wayfinding are. So drill down functionality, everything that's been supported previously is still supported, including newer features like we call them touchy maps, but being able to touch on specific locations in a map to wayfind it to that as opposed to touching on the live data item.
Okay. So this question, we might need a little bit of clarification, but any new video codecs supported, such as WebM?
The codecs are really reliant on the codecs that we load onto the player device themselves, not necessarily a limitation on the software. As a standard, we load a codec pack called K-Lite. I'm not familiar enough with the guts of that to be able to tell if that's got WebM or not in it. But feasibly, if there is a codec we can load that's supported by either Windows Media Player or C, that we would be able to support that format. It's just the player PC image might need to be adjusted.
Great. This is asking when 5.0 will be available.
It's available now. It is out in the world. I think since the 24th of September, I think.
And then is the Twitter adapter included in FWI Store today?
So currently the adapters are not included in FWI Store. Just applications, plugins, content, templates. So the adapters are still something that it requires integration framework. And then the adapter would need to be loaded into that environment, and those adapters are still purchased a la carte through us.
Great. So I think those are all the new questions. If anybody does have any other question, and we'll go through, and if we face on any of them, we'll make sure to follow up with you. We will be sending out this recording along with that email address to get to your customer service representative. So please let us know if you have any other questions, and thanks for joining us today. We hope you found this helpful. Have a great day. Bye.